It is my pleasure to participate in this historic meeting of the First Five Rotary Clubs that existed in the world. The purpose of this meeting is to take advantage of our unique situation. There's a metaphor for you. This is a unique situation, and provide an opportunity to do something we might not normally do. And that is to bring together a meeting of these five historic clubs. The first five clubs in Rotary, all together as one. And hopefully this meeting will lead to more collaboration among these five clubs. Members of the clubs were invited to submit questions during the registration process, and the discussion has been built to address these questions. And I want to thank everyone who submitted questions in advance. So let me begin by introducing the presidents of the first five Rotary clubs. First, from the Rotary Club of Chicago, and they like to call themselves Rotary One, President Marshall Schmidt. From the Rotary Club of San Francisco, Club number 2, Casey Blair.
Hello, everyone.
From the Rotary Club of Oakland, just across the bay, Rotary Club number 3, Peter Sherris.
Hello, everyone.
Up the coast, the Rotary Club of Seattle, President Kim Moore, Club number 4.
Hello.
And bringing up the rear in this group of clubs from the front, the president of the Rotary Club of Los Angeles, they like to call themselves LA5, Rick Gibson.
Hello, everyone.
So now I would like to ask the president of the Rotary Club of Seattle, Kim Moore, to kickstart our meeting with some fun Rotary traditions.
Thank you, President Maloney. And it is a pleasure to be part of the historic First Five. Throughout today's event, we will be incorporating traditions from each of the 5 legacy clubs. To kick off the meeting, we have Peter Sherris of Oakland, number 3, reciting the vision of Rotary International. Marshall Schmidt of Chicago will share the thought today, and then Linda Ruff from Seattle 4's Music Committee will sing us a song.
Hi, thank you, Kim. The Rotary Club of Oakland recites our vision because we think it tells a lot about us and about what our goals are. And we end it by saying, Rotary connects us all, so feel free to recite that in unison. Our vision is that together we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. Rotary connects us all.
Thank you very much, Peter. So a friend of mine is one of a handful of people who have completed all 42 of the Chicago marathons. And when he runs these marathons, he raises money for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society to help with cancer research. Every year he gives to his donors something called the Positive Outlook Calendar. And so this morning when I sat down to craft the thought of the day, I had to look no further than today's thought, which is by the Irish playwright George Bernard Shaw, who ironically enough reached prominence as a playwright around the time that our clubs were formed in the first decade of the 20th century. Shaw writes, "I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch which I have to hold for a moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. Shaw reminds us that as the first 5 Rotary clubs, we have an obligation to make the Rotary torch burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. Thank you.
Our patriotic song today is Irving Berlin's God Bless America. Let's do verse and chorus. While the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us swear allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair as we raise our voices in a solemn prayer. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Shall I begin with our final tradition from LA5?
Please do.
Well, good morning and good afternoon, wherever you may be. Thank you so much for this opportunity. One of the things that's so important at the Rotary Club of Los Angeles is that we take time to remember those who've been with us, those who have gone beyond. And so we're going to spend a few moments today in a Rotary Reflects and Remembers moment. We'll be ringing 3 bells today. The Rotary bells with me from our club. We'll ring 3 bells today to honor and remember those impacted by COVID-19. I will first ring a bell for those that we've lost. I'll ring a second bell for those who have survived. And then I will ring a third bell for those on the front lines offering care and comfort to the sick and the dying. First, for those we've lost. On April 12th, a dear friend of mine, not a member of the Rotary Club, but it is what made this personal for me, a professor friend of mine at the university which I serve, passed away. As our club reached out to talk to different people in our club, we found that many members knew people who had passed away or who were sick. They were fearful and anxious for their loved ones. Let me invite you now in a moment of silence to think of those you've lost or those who are at sick or at risk for COVID-19. And this morning, I ring this bell in honor of Rotary Oakland number 3 treasurer, Gene Zahas, who passed away from this disease. He had been a member of the club since the 1970s. For Gene and all we've lost. For those who've survived, we will ring a bell now in their honor. Not all are sickened or hospitalized, that they perish from this disease. Whether through special care or special health conditions, many have survived. Yet we are mindful of those who are still at risk in different parts of the country. We know that COVID-19 is not the only disease that threatens the lives of people. Many of you on this call are survivors of cancer, heart disease, or any number of ailments. So for a moment, let me ask you to think of the survivors in your life in a moment of silence. Today, I ring the bell in gratitude for them. And finally, I ring the bell for those on the front lines. We are grateful for the selfless, heroic healthcare workers in hospitals, emergency rooms, assisted living facilities, homeless shelters, and the first responders, public safety officers, firefighters, emergency responders, whose selfless act are saving lives while putting their own lives at risk. These men and women are truly living our motto of service above self. And so today I ring the final bell in their honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kim, Peter, Marshall, Linda, and Rick. We appreciate these traditions. It's now my pleasure to ask the 5 club presidents to gather around the Zoom side for the chat. Marshall provided a very appropriate quotation from George Bernard Shaw. And George Bernard Shaw had a up and down relationship with Rotary, as I understand it. And at one time, he is supposed to have said, "Where is Rotary going? Rotary's going to lunch." But we all know that while Rotary may be going to lunch, it's going many, many, many other places through its service in local communities and around the world. So I'd like to ask these 5 club presidents for a short thought from each of them about what is the future of Rotary? What do the next 100 years, there you go, next 100 years, what do the next 100 years look like? Or maybe even try the next 10 or 20. Marshall, you want to go first, since you're
Certainly.
number 1?
So I think in some ways you're looking at the future of Rotary. I think there are two things that come to mind when I think of the next 10 to 20 years and perhaps the next 100. And the first is the younger members amongst our ranks. We have an increasing focus on Rotaract and recruiting younger members. And I think the future of Rotary lies in those people who have survived now both the Great Recession and are experiencing the pandemic. The second thing I think that is going to characterize the future of Rotary is technology. And I think as technology is developed like Zoom and others, we need to take advantage of that. We need to be nimble. We need to be open and flexible to adjust to the new normal.
I don't know if we're going in order or not, but I'll piggyback off of Marshall for a moment because he mentioned technology. And I'll mention and just say that as I've become aware of technology, I think of the changes that we're seeing in technology. I am aware of its ability to unite us, but also to divide us. And so I think we're going to need to be thinking about how technology impacts our world and how do we connect people through Rotary. Because to me, that's Rotary's great gift, is that it does connect the dots with lots of different people from around the world. We have seen how technology, when it's not available to some, is very difficult and divides us. I know that even within our own club, we have a lot of people very excited about connecting through Zoom and others who don't feel comfortable with that or can't for various reasons. And so suddenly we find ourselves, even in just a little micro story there, we see our club being divided by technology. It happens in a much more sinister way, and I'm not really talking about that, but I do know that's one piece. The other thing I see, and it's very hard to imagine 100 years, I mean, we live in a moment of such accelerated change. I'm sure that very few Rotarian leaders and presidents before us ever dealt with such rapid change. And so our need to be able to adjust and pivot quickly, both as a club, to reflect what's happening in our world, in our cities, to pivot as a large worldwide organization. It will be critical. So it's accelerated change being brought by technology. How do we harness that? How do we bring that together for good and not let it divide us?
I think President Maloney needs to be unmuted by Melinda.
Who else wishes to add?
I can add a quick thought on that. I think the points of being fluid really rang true to our club. I think it was a real quick push to get into Zoom meetings, and I think it shows the flexibility of Rotary to be able to embrace this new medium and also to see how it's successful for a lot of our fellow members. We realized that maybe we had 40% of membership coming to a meeting at a lunch meeting, but then all of a sudden we had 50% or 60% showing up at a Zoom meeting. So it kind of shows that we could use all different platforms, I think, to reach Rotarians and be successful in engaging new members by being welcoming to change and changing from the status quo and being open to new ideas. And I think it's an exciting time to embrace these ideas. Thank you.
Agreed. Agreed.
Any other comments or thoughts? If not, let me move on.
I think Kim needs to be unmuted.
Yeah, so this is Peter. I was muted, but I agree with all of those comments. One of the things that I've noticed is that the really best ideas are coming from our younger members, and the success of, I think, Rotary clubs is going to depend on taking those members, taking their ideas and supporting them and promoting them. I know, for instance, that we have just developed an Oakland Rotary Club, and I'm really hoping that they're going to be the prime movers of our resources and our efforts over the next few years.
This is Kim, and I would like to add a couple thoughts. Actually, I agree with regard to the new members. The untapped opportunity for us is how to market to new members, prospective members using technology. And we know that younger people have different views of service. They like to use technology, for example, to serve and to provide support via gifts. Also, how do we retain the intimacy of a meeting where every member, every face in the Zoom tile is someone you know, versus a meeting where you invite guests? So that is something that we are talking about now. How do we strike the balance between meetings where we have a lot of people and meeting where we only have our own members?
So the next thing I'd like to ask you about is appropriate particularly for these 5 clubs. What does it mean to be an historic club, one of the first 5 clubs of, if I may be so bold, the greatest service organization in the world, operating in one of the largest cities, I mean, each one of you in one city in the United States? Who'd like to go first?
This is Rick Gibson. I'll just say that here's what it means to me. It means that whenever I present a new idea or bring something forward, it means that my phone is going to ring immediately after the meeting, and there'll be 2 people. There'll be one who calls from our historic side of the club that will say, this is the way we used to do it. And there'll be somebody from the other side that will say, no, we've got to move on and move ahead. Balancing legacy and forward thinking has always been a tricky thing. It's a very tricky thing for me. Without our legacy, we don't have the resources that we have. We don't have the ability to connect with our community because of so many relationships that have been made. But let me tell you, it is very difficult at times because of that legacy to pivot quickly, to move, to adjust as we see change. Thankfully, with this pandemic, the issue was so overwhelming, it was very easy to get on the same page pretty quickly.
Yeah, this is Peter. I get those same telephone calls. I think that it's hugely important for us to honor that tradition and those years of people who have served, but we have to look more to the future. And I know, for instance, that in my club, this opportunity with COVID and having to suddenly change all of our philanthropic efforts has been good. And that I'm really hoping that next year our president is going to focus on homelessness. And I'm really hoping that we can utilize the resources of Rotary Foundation and actually develop a global grant here in Oakland. And I think that will drive a lot of interest on the part of younger members and move us forward into the future.
This is
Interesting.
Kim.
Oh, go ahead, Kim.
Yes, thank you so much. This is Kim. For us, I think the opportunity is to remain a downtown club and to have that, balance that tradition and innovation in our club and in the way that we are relevant and visible in our community. For example, our foundation made a grant of $100,000 to the Seattle Foundation for COVID-19 response. And our members independently helped source and paid for masks in China, which were given to first responders. So I think we need to be connected and visible and active in the health of our city, especially if we continue to meet downtown as we have for the past 110 years.
I'd like to piggyback Peter's comments about homelessness, and I think it's coming especially from the cities here on the West Coast, Chicago not so much, as I used to live there as well, so I have a feeling for it, but the homeless situation is quite dire out here, and the rapid changes with our meetings also coincides with a really challenge with the homeless population and the lack of sheltering facilities. So one thing that we did was immediately started partnering with the Salvation Army to feed homeless in their place of residence or where they're staying, so they don't have to congregate in large locations. And it's been a really great project for us to team up with. And I think it's something that we have to look at and focus on, especially out here on the West Coast as clubs in bigger cities.
You know, for me, the historic role that we play in the city of Chicago really is something that we need to leverage. We do have a lot of connections and a reputation in the city. And what I've experienced as president is that there's a tremendous inequality in the city of Chicago. And through various government officials that have presented to us this year, it's become very clear to us that Rotary has a unique opportunity to work in economic development and education and maternal health in a lot of our areas to leverage the historic role that we play. Eric, our incoming president, who's on the call, and I have reached out into the community to work with community leaders and the city government to provide opportunities. I think we as Rotary clubs, as institutions that have been in these cities for a very long time, are in a unique position, and we have not only connections but also reputations that open doors for us to help everyone. And in this day of the pandemic, what you're seeing is a terrible inequality as to how it's hitting different communities. We have a member who runs the largest homeless shelter in the city, runs an organization called the Safe Haven, provides educational opportunities. And you know, through contacts like that, we're able to reach people that other organizations cannot.
If I can just add on very quickly, the legacy of our club being downtown for so long. I'm the 111th president, so that's a pretty exciting thing. But that means that we've been there long enough to build a reputation, a track record. And so we are a trusted partner already because of the good work that's come before. So there is something significant to build on. Now we have to demonstrate, can we pivot? And I think it's more important than ever for Rotary as a worldwide organization, because as we globalize, and believe me, I see this, we probably all do, because we're in arguably globalized cities for all that's good and all that's bad about that. And so what's happening with, I mean, it's super important for Rotary to thrive in these big cities. because what I think I see is that, one, there is this global look at things, but and a global perspective on things, but there's also a type of protectionism that's sort of developing, and so somehow Rotary can connect the dot between a global perspective and then do so at a local level. That is going to be super important as we look at the next 10 years or beyond, because the world is struggling to figure out, what does it mean for me to live in a globalized community? So Rotary can play a huge part in that. And I think our big city clubs can play a role in sort of pioneering ways to do that.
So even though I'm the junior person in this group, since all of you have had 110 or more presidents, and I'm only the 109th president of Rotary International, since I am the president of Rotary International, I'm going to take the prerogative to move off the suggested questions and ask one final question, because I think our timing is such. And I'd like to ask each club president, and Marshall, I'm putting you on the spot first. We'll go in order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What is the most innovative feature that your club has introduced during your year or in recent years to engage membership and to enhance and maintain the relevance of Rotary in your community?
Well, I think there are two things that I'd point to. One is really just practical and trying to be flexible in these difficult times. And the second is an attitude that I think our club has adopted. And so let me start with the first, which is when this pandemic hit, our administrator, who has been a member of Rotary on and off for quite a few years, but recently rejoined us, suggested that we offer a membership program where we agree to subsidize the dues while we're not having in-person meetings, to attract people who in a bad economic time might not otherwise even consider Rotary. And that has resulted in a large addition to our membership. And the second thing is more fundamental. A few years ago, we had the youngest president in the history of Rotary One, Connor G., who was on the call. And the elevation of Connor to president, I think, represented for us a real shift in attitude in trying to bring our youngest members into the leadership of the club as quickly as we can, engaging them as quickly as we can. And Eric, who I mentioned before, is also part of that effort. He's much younger than I am, and the idea here is we need to bring our youngest members to the forefront of the clubs, both to set an example, but also to provide new and innovative leadership and thought. And we're very, very, very happy. Connor was one of the most distinguished presidents we have and continues to be very active in our district.
Thank you, Marshall. How about Casey from San Francisco, number 2?
Thank you, President Maloney. I think one of the great things our club is focused on is achieving and embracing diversity. And I think you can look at that in our presidents. We've had, I believe, 4 of our last 7 have been women. We're trying to really reach out to the younger membership out there that we can achieve, bring into the club. We have over 50% women in our club. And I think of that, it gives everyone a feeling of warmth and welcomeness. And I think our membership committee really helps encourage this through some new initiatives that they've promoted recently, mainly being a corporate membership to try to get some of these local corporations involved. Also having a young adult membership that has lower dues, and just created this month, similar to Chicago, is a emerging entrepreneur internship membership, where those that are struggling in their business can ask for some relief on their dues as well. And then we also have a spousal membership. So if you're a spouse of a member, bring your spouse in, and it's a really discounted dues. A lot of people can't handle that, but our club is doing very well with it, getting our spouses involved in our membership as well. So I think a lot of it centers around the energy and enthusiasm with our membership committee and having a connectors division that reaches out and connects to members and makes them feel welcome, and just having this hopefully overall feeling of warmth and welcomeness to the club. So thank you.
Thanks, Casey. Peter,
Thank you,
Oakland number 3.
Yeah, so we're doing a lot of those same things. I think the thing that I most excited about was our Kinder Prep program. Essentially, our club adopted 45 transitional kindergarten classrooms, and we support about 1,000 kids with field trips and books. And it's a program that is hyper focused on our community. We have hundreds of members of our club who end up volunteering as a part of that. And so it gave a very focused, local, child-based, early childhood education ability for our members to get involved. And that was I think a very good program that was developed. The other thing I would say is that we have been focusing on our social media and streaming. We began streaming all of our meetings about a year ago, and we found that somewhere between 10 or 15 or 20 of our members would actually take advantage of that each day. So it's a way of reaching out to people who have difficulty making it to our luncheon meeting.
Kim Moore, Seattle number 4.
Thank you. So I would like to add a couple things that haven't been mentioned. We are doing some of those already, but I think the young Rotary leader concept is something that has had a lasting impact on the club. That's members who are under 35. And the shift since I've been a member, almost 20 years, from believing that we needed to review and accept prospects who were already leaders in the community versus young people who have the capacity and the interest and they're on the glide path to become leaders. So that has been a huge thing in terms of lowering the average age of our new members. Another thing that I think that is powerful is our online programming since the COVID-19 began. You know that some of the first deaths that were recorded were in Washington State. And so we were looking at this in early February and trying to figure out what we were going to do. And our online programming has actually demonstrated that interest and ability to be nimble and to pivot. And one of the best things that has come out of the online programming, which is different than it was the first time we did it, is that we do the chat rooms, and in the chat rooms, then we break into the separate groups. And the 1 week that we didn't do it, we heard about it. Our members are not that big on complaining, but they did not like that we omitted the chat rooms. And yesterday I learned in the chat room that people see a different intimacy via technology. You're watching your fellow member in their home. They're finishing their lunch. You know, they have a great story about where they bought the piece of pie they just finished. Or someone else's dog had to have a cone put on their head and the dog comes into the frame. So it creates a different kind of intimacy that we don't have in a large ballroom, but we don't want it to replace the thing that's most important to us and to young members and to older members, longer term members, is fellowship, that connection. So that's what's been important to us.
Thank you, Kim. Last but not least, from LA5, Rick Gibson.
So there are 3 things. That's a great question, Mark, and I appreciate it. There are 3 things that our leadership team looks at as we think about our future. One, we talk about this quite often: innovation, engagement, and impact. Those 3 things. In innovation, we are trying to do some things differently as we bring young people into our organization. You're hearing that theme over and over again. This year, we sponsor the USC Rotaract Club, and we made the president of the Rotaract Club a non-voting member of our board. And Ellen has done a wonderful job of just raising the visibility of Rotaract. And I believe history will prove, I hope, that decision though there was a long way for us to still go, that decision will produce an important pipeline for our club and for Rotary in general. Second is engagement. I was prideful enough to think that when I started my year, that Rotary was all about the lunch that I was presiding over, the Friday lunch, when in fact, it turns out we're not a Friday lunch club. We're a Monday club. We're a Tuesday club. We're a Thursday. We're an every day of the week club. And there is an organic gathering of our members that are beginning to take place. And instead of ignoring those or even working against those, we try to do the opposite and say, no, that's all part of being Rotary. And so we try to open it up to other members and to connect the dots that way. But I can't possibly keep up with our club. So we're letting organic engagement happen. And I think that's a good thing. Finally, impact. So innovation, engagement, and impact. For our club to have a future, we have got to demonstrate to the city of Los Angeles that we matter, that what we're working on is actually going to make a difference. I'm very excited about, as I said earlier, our club has pivoted in a big way and has come together to produce these face shields for first line responders, hospital workers, healthcare workers, homeless shelters. We're already prepared through a foundation grant of $50,000 to produce about 5,000 high-end face shields. Interestingly enough, our youngest member has a company that has a 3D printer company, and he's repurposed all of his 187 3D printers to produce the elements of these shields, and our members are assembling them. We are prepared with the right support to produce up to 30,000 of these. We have learned that on the open market, they are being priced at a very high rate. People need them today, they're back ordered. So anyway, our club has demonstrated and that it can pivot when it needs to, and that it can have a high impact on the community. So if we set our scorecard around innovation, engagement, and impact, we think that our club has a pretty bright future in our city.
Thank you so much, Rick, and thank you all. Well, I think we've come to the end of our time, and probably even more than our time for this conversation, and I appreciate it greatly. Before I give up the lead spotlight Zoom tile, I would like to announce or remind you that Rotary International is learning how to pivot itself. And since we are not able to have our convention in Honolulu, Hawaii, we will be having a virtual convention at the end of June, and from the 20th to the 26th of June. And this is not an 8-hour-a-day virtual, mind-boggling, oh my gosh, how much online time can I take? But we'll have an hour, a little over an hour general session on Saturday morning, June the 20th, Sunday morning, June the 21st. I have to say that for you in California, it's going to be at 6 a.m., but it will be recorded and you can look at it later. But 6 a.m. California time is the golden time to capture most of the Rotary world without having anybody occupied between midnight and 6 a.m. And New Zealand, there's a little problem, Eastern Australia, but every place, and Hawaii itself, but every place else, it's a much better time. So keep looking for that information. Go to riconvention.org. As there was for this meeting, there will be a registration process. So as we think about how we're innovating for the future, it's my pleasure to call upon two of our presidents-elect, A.T. Forbes from San Francisco and Eric Temple from Chicago.
Thank you very much, Mark. Within Rotary, as we all know, the action happens at the club level, and within the clubs, the action happens at the committee level. So when you registered for this meeting, you were asked to choose a breakout session that corresponds to committees that are common amongst, and I think amongst most clubs, membership international service, and local or community service. Those topics drive so much of what we do and accomplish as Rotarians. So in a few minutes, Zoom will automatically send you into your selected breakout. And in those breakouts, we're going to want to hear about what the 5 clubs here are doing right now in those areas. What's working, what isn't, opportunities for collaboration, and potential next steps. JT?
Thank you, Eric. Greetings from San Francisco. So at the end of the breakout sessions, today's meeting will be concluded, but it will only be the beginning of a collaboration between our 5 clubs. We ask that each member from the clubs take keynote takeaways from the discussion, share with your members, and solicit feedback. And we will reconvene in the future to discuss the outcomes of the breakouts and our next steps. If there are immediate actions to be taken emerging from the breakouts, our facilitators will make sure those get shared with the clubs. But before we go into the breakouts, I'd like to invite back to the screen the president of my club, Mr. Casey Blair, to recite the 4-way test. Casey?
Thank you, JT. As we were talking about planning this meeting, one thing I want to do is give a shout out to Melinda, who's done an amazing job as being the engine behind this and really making it happen. So thank you so much for all your hard work and help and pushing us along. So thank you again, Melinda. And as we were talking about some of the themes and things that we do in each of our clubs, the 4-way test, of course, was first and foremost. So before we go into our breakout sessions, I like to remind people about how to conduct themselves during these breakouts, and that is the 4-way test. So I will repeat them here. The 4-way test of the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? So keep those thoughts in your mind as we break out. And President Maloney, any last thoughts before we break away here?
Well, I appreciate this opportunity to participate in this historic event. I congratulate you for organizing it. I thank Melinda, and I'm sure there's more than Melinda that helped get this all put together. And thanks to Marshall Schmidt, who actually invited me to participate. And best of luck as you move forward, and everybody stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you.
Aloha.
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 Aloha.